Hello, class. I assume that this is recording. I have been experimenting this afternoon with this equipment and have found that there have been some problems. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure just how loud this may sound, but hopefully it will work. And I'll review this, I suppose, at the end of this entire study. I see that my software does not allow pause as it did before. Well, maybe it does, and it might be necessary to do that. Welcome to the course that is entitled Introduction to Graduate Research. You might see, if you have a copy of the syllabus, that there is a mistake in some of the copies that have been circulating, because the course number is GR750 in the mistaken copies. This will be for the fall of 2019 semester. Brother Daniel has sent me information updating that and has told me that the actual course title, and I get this carefully and mark this down if it is not already marked down properly in your syllabus, is R-101, Introduction to Graduate Studies, within parentheses number 3, referring to 3 hours courses, 3-hour study that will be awarded for this course. R-101, Introduction to Graduate Studies. He gives a quick summary of what he expects this class to be. He says this class introduces the student to ACU, the embodiment of the mission statement, and what is expected from students in the graduate degree programs. So with that being said, we will turn our attention now to look at the actual syllabus, which I hope to review in this session. I'm not sure if you will be viewing it in the morning or afternoon, so it's hard to say good morning or good afternoon and exchange such pleasantries. This whole idea of videotaping instead of using the Skype software is new to me. Some of you might have had me for classes in the past in which we did use that software and were able to interact more or less on a one-to-one basis. It was sort of like being together in a live class setting with the Skype software, depending upon the connection, of course, if we had a good connection. But with this method of curriculum delivery, it will be kind of one-sided. I will be making presentations. We could call them lectures, and pre-recording those and having the links to those videos set up for you in such a way that at your own leisure, on your own good time, you can go back and study. And that's the idea behind setting forth this particular course of study in this way, rather than using the Skype software as we have in the past. I am assuming that you are about to begin your graduate studies, or you have already begun. Perhaps the Master of Arts degree or the Master of Divinity degree, which is more advanced, of course. It could be that you're contemplating getting into the DMin program, the Doctor of Ministry degree program, which we are developing at this particular time. It has been my privilege to work with the administration in the actual development of that latter doctoral course of studies. And I would appreciate any input that you might provide. Anything you'd like to tell me about from your point of view you think would be beneficial to the students, why, feel free to do so. I would love to receive your emails along those lines. We have set forth some ideas about what we want to accomplish, the kinds of courses that will be taught, how many hours will be spent in those courses of study. And as we proceed with this study, Introduction to Graduate Research, I suppose there will be opportunity for us to speak not only of graduate research in general, but of the particular situations that you will be facing at ACU. A number of years ago, it was my opportunity to be able to go to an undergraduate program at a liberal arts college conducted by the Churches of Christ in the state of Tennessee, Freed-Hardeman University. This was in the mid to late 1970s. That sort of dates me, but you could guess that already by my whitened beard. But it is true that I am on up in years and did begin my undergraduate studies back in the 20th century, of course. And it was my opportunity to go 4 years to Freed-Hardeman and to major in Bible. In other words, these were biblical studies, although I was given an opportunity to study from some of the other liberal arts programs as well. Now, when I say liberal, I don't mean liberal in the sense of theologically liberal. such as one who takes liberties with the Word of God. This is a common term that refers to secular studies, such as English, literature, history, science classes, math, and that sort of thing. Secular courses that help round out your understanding of the world so that you will be a more effective public speaker and personal worker when you're teaching the Bible to others. So many of our brethren have set up such private liberal arts colleges around the United States. That is in the southeastern United States and the state of Tennessee. I was not able to finish that course of study, the bachelor's degree. I was working on the Bachelor of Arts degree in Biblical Studies with a Bible major, as we would say it then, at Freed-Hardeman, but had to, once I got married, had to move out of the state. And later returned only to have opportunity to attend a denominational college, Bethel College, where I was able to major in both English and religious studies, a double major in both English and religious studies, and receive my Bachelor of Arts degree, the BA degree, which is the undergraduate degree, one of our undergraduate degrees here in the United States, perhaps the most common. I'm not completely familiar with your academic system in the Philippines. There could be some minor differences, maybe in some respects major differences, but I'm going to assume that you are familiar with our kinds of studies in the United States, so that as I speak of some of my experiences, you will be able to relate to them somewhat and compare them to what you know about your own school system in the Philippines. And I hope that is the case. And as you have opportunity, you might also inform me about any differences via email or other means of communication. So I would urge you please to do that if you have an opportunity, and to let me know about your system in comparison to our system if there aren't any significant differences. After I finished my graduate degree, I was able to go to what we now call Amridge University, which is located in Montgomery, Alabama, also in the southeastern United States. At one time it was called Alabama Christian School of Religion. When I matriculated into my first master's program, the Master of Arts program in Religious Studies at Amridge back in the 1980s, the school was then called Alabama Christian School of Religion. Later the name was changed to Southern Christian University. Later the name was changed to Regions University, but for legal purposes it had to be changed again, and so now it is called Amridge University. And I trust that this will be the final permanent name of the institution, where I took the master's degree in the early 80s, the Master Divinity degree I think in the very late 80s, and then finally took the Doctor of Philosophy degree in the year 2016, finished my course of studies in the year 2016. In between, in the late 90s, I was able to go to Erskine Theological Seminary, also in the southeastern United States, in the state of South Carolina, which is associated with the Associate Reformed Presbyterian denomination, and finished the Doctor of Ministry degree at that institution, the D-Min degree. So I'm familiar with the D-Min program, and that's why I think I was asked to help to develop this D-Min program for ACU. And I'm excited about doing that, and about all of you who may be interested in getting into that program. And let me encourage you, if opportunity avails itself for you to get into that program, when it becomes available, work on your master's degree or your MDiv degree, if that's what you're doing now, and be prepared to matriculate into the D-Min program, which I think is a necessity. Before I get into the actual syllabus itself and reviewing what are the requirements for this course, let me just briefly say why I think graduate studies are important. What interested me personally in studying the Bible at a more in-depth level. When I was studying at the undergraduate level, I read a number of sources, books, and heard lectures by unbelievers, skeptics, atheists, higher biblical critics, higher critics of the Bible, and came to see that these are very educated men and women whose sole purpose in life seems to be to attack our faith in Christ Jesus. And I knew that we had good answers to their arguments. Their arguments were mistaken. They were wrong. Their whole viewpoint is misguided, but they could use the credentials they possess, such as master's degrees and doctor's degrees, to be able to impress others with the idea that they were very learned, very academically qualified to speak to these issues. And when we would come to them to refute their false teaching, only possessing 2-year degrees from preacher schools, or even 4-year degrees, undergraduate degrees from our liberal arts schools. We were not quite at their academic level. Now, this should not mean that much, because if a man has acquired knowledge of the subject matter, it doesn't matter what letters are attached to his name on paper, whether it's D-Min, PhD, MA, or whatever. But those kinds of titles do mean things to some people, particularly in the academic world. And when we're trying to make our appeal to the academic world, that's why we see that there is an importance to acquiring these credentials. And as we will discuss in future lessons, hopefully it will never be for the sake of pride. If pride is the prime motivation, if it is any motivation at all, then we should do some soul searching and ask the Lord to help us overcome that sin. I'll talk about that, the Lord willing, in future studies. It should never be from pride, but with a desire humbly to learn as much as we can and to develop our skills to the highest degree possible, so that we will be capable of answering those very educated opponents of faith in Christ Jesus who live in our world today and who are highly influential in our world today. So that's why I consider graduate studies to be of great importance. Now, with those personal observations made, and I'll probably engage in others like that in the course of this study, I would urge you to take your course study, your outline, your syllabus, and look at page 2 of 6. I assume you have a copy of the syllabus. And if not, let me urge you to ask the administration to get such a copy into your hands as soon as possible, please. Under the heading called Exhortation, there's a word of advice about copying the course syllabi. And this is good for any of the courses you take. I've mentioned this in the past, and you have seen this note perhaps, but let me remind you, if you keep up with this, keep this for future reference. It could be helpful in seeking employment or even in other advanced studies that you might enter into. Now, I have wrongly said in this copy that the catalog course description is of GR 750, Introduction to Graduate Research. It is not GR 750, but as I explained at the beginning of this study, it is R-101, Introduction to Graduate Research. And this will be assumed to be preliminary to your enrollment in ACU's graduate program of studies. I know you have to have such a course as this to enter into the doctoral level, and you will have to have such a course as this to enter into the master's program, MA or MDiv degree. You'll also see instructor contact information. This might not be particularly relevant, especially the telephone numbers, unless there is a grave emergency and you need to call me internationally. You can use these telephone numbers. They are still valid numbers. Or you can use my email, which is much more practical, philipgray@mindspring.com. Now we look at the course objectives. What are we trying to do in this course of study? And the emphasis is upon what you the student, will learn, what skill sets you will develop. Upon completion of this course, the student should be able to, first, better comprehend the purpose, goals, and methods of graduate research. Now, I mentioned something a moment ago about the purpose. We'll look at this in more in-depth ways when we get to that session that's scheduled, and we'll look at the schedule later on in reviewing the syllabus. But let me remind you that there are many reasons you would perhaps want to study at the graduate level. You may have your own personal reasons. If you are planning to go into training men to preach the gospel, into academic work yourself, into being a teacher or a professor in one of our universities or preacher schools, well, of course, having a graduate degree would be of great benefit. So that might be your purpose, the reason why you particularly want to enter into this program of studies. Your goals could have to do with defending the faith, or with better being able to convert others and converse with others about the Bible. We'll talk about that as we get to that. And we'll talk about methods of graduate research, how the curricula might be delivered. In this case, we're doing it via pre-recorded videos, and I hope that will work. And even maybe by the chat room method, as we will get into that. I don't know a great deal about live chat, but hopefully we can get into that before long. You should also be aware of the benefits and dangers of graduate level studies. Let me say that this note is my own in past studies, and I've had a number of courses like this over the years, Introduction to Graduate Research at different institutions for different levels of graduate work, I can say that this is my particular word of advice, word of warning. I wish that I had been warned when I was younger and I entered into such programs of study, but now I can say that I'm warning you that there are in fact dangers from our graduate school level of study, our various levels of study at grad school. And I'll talk about those when we get to the appropriate juncture, as will be seen in the outline. But there are also many benefits, and those benefits do outweigh the dangers. But we should be aware of both and capable of discerning the difference. Thirdly, the students should have a better grasp of certain aspects of current religious thought. Because you see, as I explained, these kinds of thinkings relate to your academic training in the theological world, in the modern world. In other words, how men are thinking theologically today will impact the way they develop graduate programs, the way those programs are carried out. And I'm sure that will be true to some extent with us also at ACU, but you should have some idea about current religious thought. In other words, we're not just going to talk about technical, boring, and arid details such as how to do research. We'll have to study those things, of course. How to read a book. Yes, we'll look at that. How to write a term paper. Of course, we will review such matters. But I want you to see what sorts of things are being studied in the religious fields out there in different graduate programs. And we'll get an idea of what we need to learn in order to round out our own academic background to be actually prepared to be comparable to be compared to our counterparts who might come from graduate programs, particularly out of denominational institutions. And for lack of a better comparison, this is the way we will have to compare ourselves from time to time. Our programs with their programs to see how we measure up. Number 4, upon completion of this course, the student should have a working knowledge of the nature and the content of typical graduate level courses as they're being taught in seminaries and in schools of theology today. A quick word about the word seminary. Our brethren have not liked the use of that term traditionally. We've often associated it with stuffy intellectual types in the denominational world, and maybe with good reason. I don't think it's biblically wrong to call an institution a seminary. The idea is that it's a seedbed institution. It's a place from the word for seed, where the seeds are planted and the ideas are planted, and they later germinate in your life. Nothing wrong with that, but we generally steer clear of that, and we call our advanced programs of study graduate level study or graduate programs. But we'll understand something about what's going on in the schools around us. Also, you should better articulate what you hope to accomplish in your own graduate level of training. And I might even have you to, I don't know, I don't have that listed yet, but I might even have you to write down some things and submit them to me as email attachments, in which you tell me something about what you hope to accomplish. You may have a particular area you're most interested in, and you can explain how graduate studies will help you. You are to improve your skills at advanced biblical and theological research. Now that goes without saying. That's why such courses are required, as this course. And I hope that we're able to at least whet your appetite for those subject matters. You will develop your ability at writing advanced level term papers. Now, of course, to be where you are now academically, you've had to write research papers over the years, I would assume. So you know something about those. But we should learn more and develop more skills at writing standardized research papers. In other words, papers that could be accepted just about anywhere, under any circumstances, in any graduate program in the world where English is spoken. We're assuming all of this will be conducted in English. So that if you were to write such a paper, it would conform to all of the expectations in terms of the mechanics of the paper, how the paper is set up, the format of the paper, how you document your sources, the types of footnotes you use, whether you use footnotes or endnotes, and what kinds of things you include in your paper. So we want to be sure that we develop such skills along those lines, and they will transfer to your more advanced term papers. Bigger term papers, we will say, tongue-in-cheek, the biggest paper of all being the dissertation. But along the way, you might write a master's thesis as well. Furthermore, in this course of study, we hope that you will enhance your skills at critical thinking, logic, in other words, reasoning, and your ability to evaluate the logic and reasoning of others, and the rhetoric that's often used by others, to be able to evaluate argumentation, to recognize fallacies, and to be able to set forth good arguments on your own. And we'll talk about all that later. Now please, class, turn to page 3 of 6 of the syllabus. Required course textbooks. At the top of the page, well, I'm not requiring any textbook per se, any textbook, but I will be submitting certain handouts for you to keep and put into a loose leaf notebook of some type so that you'll have this for future reference. I would strongly recommend, if you are able to get hold of the 3 sources that are listed under selected course bibliography. I'll be using these in preparation for a number of lectures, such as a work by Cyril Barber called Introduction to Graduate Research. I thought I had a copy here handy to hold up and show you. I do not at this moment, but I'll get that to you later, the Lord willing. Or another book by Geisler on Come and Let Us Reason. And then Kate Turabian's A Manual for Writers of Term Papers. There are various editions. This is one of the older ones, the 4th edition. If you can get a hold of this book, or even the newer ones, I'm not sure which one will be required at ACU. This is the 6th edition. You will see what the standard ways of doing footnotes and abbreviations and other such things are, and that will be helpful. Again, on page 3 of 6, course assignments and requirements, exams and summary. Now, you've read some of this before, and you will see that exams are often necessary. In this particular course, at this time, I am not planning to administer a formal exam, a written exam of any sort. No midterm, no final exam. So I can hear you all breathe a collective sigh of relief. And yet we may try to find some ways to evaluate your progress other than exams. I know that the term paper that will be required for this course will be such a means of evaluation. Your research paper will count for 350 points out of the whole semester, for a total of 1,000 points in the entire semester. You will keep a student notebook. Some of you have done that in the past, and I'll talk about that more in the future, where you will retain all of your own private notes, and hopefully you are writing them down right now as you are listening to this video. I strongly encourage you to have some notebook paper, some blank pages, and a pen or pencil, and to write down some major points as you are hearing them, some ideas that you need to remember for the future, and keep that with your notebook along with the handouts I will submit. Then there's another more subjective quality called student participation, as you interact with other students and as you interact with your teacher. That will count for 300 points, and unless you're just dead during the course and buried in the ground 6 feet under, you probably will get those 300 points. Unless, of course, you were, not to be serious or take any time whatsoever to show that you're interested in the course. Any questions about any of these requirements, you can submit to me via email at philipgray@mindspring.com. Now I'm on page 4 of 6, and I'm looking at the assignments made by week and the subtopics we want to explore in this course of study. Now, of course, we're talking about 3 one-hour sessions for every week of the semester. There could be exceptions. I don't know about them yet. It could be that the office will inform me about national holidays or special events on campus that would require us to suspend for that week, either all 3 sessions or 1 or 2 sessions for that week. But until I learn about those, I'm just going to go on the assumption that we're going to go through continuously studying as is outlined here. In the week of August the 26th, which you now know has already come, we will be first doing what we are now, reviewing and explaining the syllabus, introducing the course in that way. The next time we'll look at the purposes and the goals of graduate research. Talk about the whole concept of a school, a graduate school, and ask why anybody would want to keep going to school after graduating from school, and that's what you're doing when you go to graduate school. We'll look then at the whole idea of the school from a biblical point of view. Some of our brethren in the Restoration movement, especially in the United States, in times gone by, have debated whether it is even scriptural for liberal arts colleges to exist. And even today there are some who have qualms about that. We'll talk about that issue at that time to see if they are biblically authorized. I believe that they are, but I'd like to discuss the different pros and cons to that subject matter. The second week we'll also have 3 sessions and talk about different kinds of programs that are available out there in the academic world. And we'll look at the whole question of accreditation. I'll talk about that at length at that time and hopefully make some connection with your goals and aims to be accredited, what you've already accomplished and what you hope to accomplish. I say you, ours at ACU. And I'll talk about what problems with possessing accreditation and problems with not having it as well. The next week we'll look at the history of graduate research and graduate education in the churches of Christ in general. I'll talk about the knowledge explosion, a phrase that's not mine, many have used, and why we should have such a program of graduate research at ACU. The next week we'll look at the benefits and dangers, as I mentioned earlier, how this whole kind of program could hurt you. It could hurt you. It could make you into a bad person. And I hope that it won't. But that is a possibility, and I have known, sadly, many formerly very good men, good brothers in Christ, good gospel preachers, to enter into graduate programs of study, only to have their faith weakened, or to be carried off into other fields of endeavor, or to be carried away with other ideas, so that now they're not useful to the Lord's cause, and in fact are even harmful. Many have adopted outright liberalism and skepticism, and we hope to develop a program where we can have excellence in research, excellence in academic pursuits, while at the same time maintaining sound doctrine. Let me emphasize, this is what I hope we can accomplish at this institution, to maintain sound doctrine while striving for excellence, developing a program that will not be secondary to any program out there. I'll look also in the next session about benefits of graduate research. Let me pause for just a moment, please. I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Yes? Bye. I apologize for the interruption. Actually, I could not get the pause button to operate. I don't know why. So I had to keep recording. That was my wife, and we had a simple private conversation. October the 7th, we'll look at the kinds of degrees that are being... Well, I'll talk about hardships on your family and other such. You can read this. I'm not going to read all of this. There's no reason to. Look at page 5 of 6 and see the rest of the things that we hope to study. Then on page 6 of 6 in the syllabus, please notice that there will be the following requirements for the course. No formal exam, as I mentioned, but you will be asked to do a research paper. Write a brief research paper using the advice and suggestions made in this course of study. So we're going to be talking about how to do research papers in some of our sessions that are scheduled in the future, and you will especially be getting ready then to write your paper. 6 to 8 pages in length, maybe double-spaced, 12-point font, Times New Roman is preferred, but you can use others if they are comparable to Times New Roman. The student notebook, you're asked to keep a notebook. Now, if you will read this paragraph, you'll see some of this language is copied and pasted from another course syllabus, one of my other courses. And I forgot to delete the reference made to the exams. We will not have exams, although they are mentioned in this note. So just disregard that. Under class participation, I'll talk about group chat, and if we're able to learn how to use that and work that out together, we should be able to interact with one another. Maybe not in the same way you could with Skype, but we'll be able to interact with one another. Now, that's basically what I wanted to discuss from the syllabus. And I'm sure I did skip over some of the things that are slated to be studied in the next several months. You might have questions about those things, so feel free to get in touch with me. I again encourage you to stay in touch with me on a regular basis. I just need to know that you're watching these videos. In fact, it would not be a bad idea, class, and let me make this very plain. It would in fact be a very good idea if you could send me an email after watching each and every class session. And all you need to do is say, Dr. Gray or Brother Gray or Philip, however you want to address me, or Sir, however you want to address me. You could say, Brother, I have finished watching session 2 for the week of August the 26th. Or I have finished watching session 1 of whatever week in September. Just identify the session by means of the week and the number of the session. There are 3 sessions for each week. 3 sessions per week, generally of 1 hour in length, though I assume that this session will be shorter. Some few sessions might go over slightly, others may come short of that mark, but that's roughly the goal, to have a 1 hour session each time. So I would urge you, if you can, to let me know by email your name, who you are, and tell me something about yourself also. Remind me if we've had classes together, if we already know each other. Tell me where you are academically. Please, in your first email, tell me where you are academically. If you have already finished your undergraduate program of studies, if you already possess a bachelor's degree and you're moving into the Master of Arts degree program, please let me know. Or if you're going into the doctoral program soon, or the MDiv program, let me know. I'd like to know where you are. Keep me informed about your progress. Ask any questions you may have. And I'm hoping in this course of study that a great deal of good will come about. You know, these kinds of classes are required. Introduction to Graduate Research. And some people cringe when they read on their paper when they're enrolling in class, hey, you've got to study this. Many people just don't want to do it. But let me assure you, it will be worthwhile. So thank you very much, and God bless you. Hello? Yeah, this is Philip. No.